Hey, folks, we're live. It's Lunch with Mal. Hooray. We're back again. I mean, we were back last week too, but it's again. It's still again. And the only thing on my teeth, I just had two Oreos. And I'm like, that's probably not the right thing to have right now. This stream is not showing up on my profile. I think that happened last week as well because I didn't have as big a live attendance. Lots of people watch it later, but I didn't have it live. There it is. Okay, it's live now. I just want to check my permissions because it seemed like something was wrong. Okay, no, it's public. Good, good. All right, everything is good. So, hi, everybody. How are you doing? I hope folks are having as good a week as you can. Um, I get some people, hey, Miss O'Connell. I get some people who send me ideas about what I should talk about. One of whom is 2 weeks in a row now is Susan Spectorum, and she's always got great things. I have to say, Susan, like somehow like the way that you talk and you share information reminds me of my mother, but like a good version of my mother. Not to say that you're old enough to be my mother, you're absolutely not. Um, but I don't know. I like it. What I'm saying is I'm down with it. It gives me warm fuzzies. I don't know why, uh, but it does. Anywho, um, what to do when Amazon kind of goes sideways, right? So of course the initial issue happened on Sunday, and then the trickle on effect is still going on. I think it was late Sunday, either late Sunday or early Monday. I can't remember the exact time it started in, based on also time zones. But for those of you who aren't like super familiar how Amazon works, Amazon has this service called AWS, Amazon Web Services. And Amazon Web Services is actually about 1/3 of the cloud. Like it's 1/3 of the internet, at least for North America and Western Europe, runs on AWS. So like when you watch a Netflix movie, Netflix has servers that are streaming that movie to you, but Netflix doesn't own those servers because they don't want to have to own a bunch of hardware in a building somewhere to make sure it's all on and safe and whatnot. They use virtual servers that they rent from Amazon, and then that's what everything runs on. And then if a server goes down and has a problem, they just rent another virtual server from Amazon and let Amazon deal with any problems with the actual hardware and physical setup and everything. I used to work for a company that was one of Amazon's top 10 AWS clients. So I've run hundreds and hundreds, and the company as a whole has run tens of thousands of AWS servers. So very familiar with sort of how their whole infrastructure works. And the other thing that what happened on Sunday, just for anyone who's curious with the details, is that in the Amazon East center, a region. So Amazon has regions, and within the regions, they have data centers. They have these things called DNS servers, which stands for domain name service. And DNS is the thing that, like, when you type in google.com, the internet doesn't function on google.com. The internet functions on like numeric addresses for where computers are. And then based on the numeric address, which if you're savvy is called an IP address, which I guess now is alphanumeric, but that's a whole other story. It needs to know basically where to find the actual machine somewhere out there that runs google.com, which interestingly is different depending on where you are. The internet's savvy about if you're here and you want to go to google.com, we send you to a server over here. And if you're here and you want to go to google.com, we send you to a server over here. So you're not traversing the globe to try to get this information. A good way to think about it is that it's GPS for computers on the internet to find each other. My daughter described it that way yesterday. I thought, like, that is actually a fabulous way of thinking of this. Hey, it's something else. So yeah, so GPS for how computers find each other on the internet, and that had a problem. So like no major computers went down, just the GPS system that tells all the computers how to find each other went down. It was still happening yesterday. Knock-on effects were happening. Day before was actually especially bad, especially in the gaming world. Lots of game servers were having trouble working because they couldn't. Your local computer at home couldn't actually find the game server because they run on AWS as well. And then today, Amazon Attribution doesn't have any data at all for yesterday yet. And the data before that is kind of suspect, right? Because if the data for back yesterday hasn't even filled in yet, how do we know that the data for Tuesday and Monday is correct too? So it creates a lot of uncertainty, and that's really the thing that and the other thing too is like you don't know. Like Mr. Campbell says, Bulbapedia was down off and on, and you don't know like is it what's happening? It's sporadic. It's weird. We were trying to play a game on Tuesday. Jill could connect, and Eva and I couldn't, probably because we were for whatever reason hitting a different server that we were having trouble making a solid connection to. Um, and it creates we're all very used to the internet kind of just working. And for those of us who have like sort of dealt with the nuts and bolts infrastructure of how the internet's actually put together, it's sort of a miracle that it works at all. It's it's like every computer on the internet does not know how to get from point A to point B, but it knows how to get to point A1. It knows how to get one computer closer to point B. And so everything on the internet sort of like just meanders its way closer to the way it's where it's trying to get and eventually gets there. It's miraculous. Um, and believe it or not, there are actually places on the internet where you can't get there from here. Like the computers just don't know how to get from point A to point B. But that happens a lot less than it used to, and we're kind of all just used to the internet working. So when it doesn't work, it creates a lot of uncertainty and fear, and that's that's something that Susan had mentioned in her email. Discussed not what not to do when Amazon AWS is down. As it was like, don't panic and don't turn off Facebook or AMS ads. And I think that's really the big thing is that um, we not everything is up all the time. We don't have like Amazon does not make 100% uptime guarantee to us, um, and so we shouldn't sort of operate under the mental. I mean, we sort of do operate under the belief that everything will just work when we turn on our TV and connect to Netflix. It'll just load the Netflix homepage and start showing us something. And if there is a problem, you just try again and it works right away. Not, oh dear, it won't work for a day or something like that. Um, but I think it's sort of like there's like a level below that, um, where we check things too much, and we end up trying to make correlations that don't exist or can't really even be made, and that's a really big problem. In by the way, if you're watching, feel free to sound off too. I'm not sure all the comments are coming through. Um, they seem kind of sporadic. I'm just seeing ones from YouTube right now, but there are people watching on Facebook. So say hi. It's always nice to see you guys around. Um, and then something I see people doing a lot, especially when times get tight, when things are difficult, when things aren't working super well, people watch everything every single day and they're trying to make correlations like, wow, I spent this much money on ads this day, but my royalties were down. I should kill off my ads. And in a world where the reporting was instantaneous, that would be great. And it actually, if you're running direct sales ads to Shopify, you can almost do that because it's rare that your data is more than a couple hours behind at most. It's even rare that your data is a couple hours behind. Oftentimes your data is like up to the minute. Like someone buys a book right now, you're going to know about it in 60 seconds that they bought the book. But when you're dealing with something like Amazon, and hey, Alex, how's it going? And especially when you're dealing with something like KU in the mix, there is no right now with the data. Amazon, only like I've done a number of tests on this, like taking books that were completely dead, did a bunch of page reads on it, and waited to see how long it took that data to show up in attribution and for it to show up in the KDP dashboard. And it's oftentimes 3 days. And also, you got to remember too is that requires the reading device that the person is reading on to actually update the data. So they're actually reading on a physical Kindle device and they're out on the beach or they're on a family trip and they're in the mountains with their car, and they read your book all the way through, and then the battery dies on their Kindle and they bring it home and they charge it up a week and a half later, right? Like there's so many little user behaviors that can cause page reads to be delayed. So KU is such a crapshoot for like when your data is actually going to show up. And then your Kindle sends the data to Amazon. Amazon may not process it. Amazon might have an outage, or something like that. And also, going sort of back talking about AWS and how Amazon has like this sea of servers. Like I said, 1/3 of the internet is powered by AWS. Another third of the internet passes through a company called Akamai, which is like sort of like one of the back end caching providers for the internet, and a shocking amount of data is fully within their control. Not conspiracy theory you guys too much with all that stuff, but it is interesting how how parts of the internet are very much controlled by certain companies. And generally speaking, they're not malicious because there's too much data for them to be malicious about. But it is interesting that there are some major single points of failure. But anyway, um, you better believe it that when Amazon is like thinking about their bottom line and they've got all of these AWS servers out there that they can rent to people to use, who are they going to prioritize? Reporting of things that already happened and money that was already collected, or someone who will pay them money for a server? Because Amazon runs their stuff on AWS as well. They dog food the thing. So um, Amazon Marketing Services, Amazon Attribution, the KDP Bookshelf, the KDP reporting system also all runs on AWS. And you better believe it that they deprioritize the reporting systems for their vendors, or they're not their vendors. We're not specifically, we're more like their retail partners. I don't know. There's a word that's escaping me. But anyway, they deprioritize reporting. And you can actually see this if you really follow the data. And I have a bit of an advantage. I have high visibility into hundreds of accounts where I can see the reporting data and results across like literally hundreds of accounts. But you can see at the end of every single month that there's a slowdown in the data reporting. There's also a slowdown in rank update at the end of every single month. And that's because they're processing payments, they're processing bills, they're using the AWS resources that they've allocated for these things for stuff that doesn't show up on the graphs for us, which is nice because I mean, I'd like to get paid by Amazon as well. So I do appreciate them prioritize paying me over showing me a pretty graph. But it's worth noting that you can see how they run their services kind of on the ragged edge for us all the time. And so we're sort of our reporting for us is it feels like it's at the bottom of the barrel. Maybe there's someone else further down. I don't know, but we sort of have to assume that in many scenarios we're going to not have data that's up to date, and we have to sort of like gird our loins for that. Like I don't actually start ads anymore toward the end of the month. Like in the last 4 or 5 days of the month, I won't start ads because I know that the attribution data will be delayed and unreliable for about a week a lot of the time. And I don't want to have that first week of my ad fired up during that time where I can't trust the data. I mean, you can never really fully trust attribution data, but like the trust goes below like a certain threshold. So I've kind of made that decision that I only start ads during certain times of the month because those are the times of the month where I know that the attribution data could be good, notwithstanding Amazon having outages that affect that. But kind of circling back around to like, what do we do about it as authors? I mean, one of the things is we can't actually, other than like maybe don't do your launches, don't launch on weekends, don't launch too close to the beginning and end of a month because Amazon stuff is delayed, and oftentimes you'll see rank update problems happen a lot of times around those periods as well. So you'll launch in the middle of the month. Don't launch on weekends. The reason why you don't want to launch on weekends is there's some sort of major outage. The guy that can fix it is on vacation or refuses to answer his phone because Amazon's overworking him to begin with. So, try to launch during like regular US business hours, because if there's a problem, chances are the person who can fix the problem is actually on the job at the time. So there are some things we can kind of do to protect ourselves against problems like that. But the other thing is that we have to like not look at day-to-day data. Oh, you're talking about your payments. YouTube, yeah, you have to wait, 90 to 60 days to get paid by Amazon for things. Because if you sell a book on January 1st, you're not going to get the payment for that until the very end of March. But if you sell on January 31st, your payment's also going to come at the end of March, which I get why they do that because they have to process returns and stuff like that. But yeah, so don't look at your data day to day because the data can't be correlated. Money you spend on ads is not going to immediately be reflected by royalties that day because people might have to see the ad a couple of times. They got to borrow the book. They've got to get through their existing TBR pile. They've got to start reading your book. There's so many elements that can cause that data to be delayed before we even encounter Amazon delays. And trying to look at data day by day. Hey, Vicky. Hey, Jillybug. Oh no, you forgot your earbuds. I don't know if closed captions exist or not for this. Um, but it will literally drive you mad. So this will show you guys how crazy I've been over the years about actually like working out data for things. Back when I first started selling, and this is like the big problem too. When you start selling well, it's actually more stressful than when you aren't selling well because you're like, what if it all just evaporates? What if it all just disappears? What if like I wake up tomorrow and it's over? Because like we're not like interacting with people so much. We're not like seeing people walk into our store and having an experience with them. We're just like number shows up on page, says I made money. And what if tomorrow number doesn't show up on page? Like it's we have that separation. We don't have that certainty. We don't have that direct connection with our readers based on the way the retailers work. And it causes a lot of stress and anxiety. And so what I was doing um, is I was like every single hour at the top of the hour, I would mark down, sales, royalties, ranks, everything. I would note everything across like half a dozen books. Um, and then overall, and I was trying to find some sort of trend. Like, is it better if I run ads, if I boost my spend on my ads in the evening? Is it better if I do this or the other thing? Like, what's going to work out the best? Trying to find some sort of correlation if I fired up a new ad the day before, trying to look for some sort of result in the very next morning if it worked, trying to see like, do people read more in the evening East Coast time? Like trying to find anything about how the books sell, when they sell more, when people read more, everything. I did that for over a year. I think I did it for 18 months. Every hour of every day, I would miss about 6 hours during the night, but not much happened usually then. And one of the things I did find is that things always change. There were weird periods where like data wouldn't update sometimes for a few hours, and sometimes for a while that was like every day at 10 o'clock data would not update until midnight. But then it changed to like 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time where data wouldn't update for a few hours. Then that problem went away entirely, for a couple of months. And then it came back and it was like 9 in the morning. Um, and what I learned through all of this is that there's no certainty in the data. It's too variable. There's too many factors involved, and trying to look at things day to day, or in my case, hour by hour, would only lead to insanity. It wasn't good for my mental health, um, and I couldn't actually figure anything out anyway. Um, all I did was stress myself out. All I did was spend time spinning my wheels, trying to react to things that I was guessing about, that I couldn't actually even see. Because as much as we want it to be, as much as we want to say, I did a thing today, and this thing happened tomorrow, or the next day, it must be because of the thing I did. As much as we want to say that, we can't. We can't say that. Um, and the only thing you can really do is like look at longer term averages. I sent out 2 emails last week about a promotion, and at the end of the week, here were my results. That's like a rational thing to do because over the course of a week, the averages start to work out in your favor and you can actually determine things. But day to day, stressing because on Sunday morning the numbers were low because of the Amazon outage, or Monday morning, whichever the case may have been, is not going to help. Um, and, and again, I say this as somebody who sees the data across hundreds of accounts. Um, you know, sometimes I see a trend that hits everybody. Like right now, there's no attribution data, or at least as of an hour ago, there's no attribution data for yesterday. The graphs are all flatlined for yesterday, which does happen from time to time. Sometimes I see that on a smattering of accounts, but not others. So it's even when something happens and is a trend, it's oftentimes not even a universal trend too. So it's even if we like start talking to our peers, a lot of times we might not actually even still have the full picture. So hey Vicky on Amazon or on YouTube, I mean. Um, so yeah, I think hopefully that can be useful for you to know that well, one, everybody suffers from this. Everybody freaks out. I talk to authors, and to be honest, the authors who make the most money are oftentimes the ones who freak out the most. Um, Usually because I mean, as you make more money, you build up a business where you have to pay people and you have more expenses and whatnot. So they, there's that angle that they're like, I might not be able to afford my mortgage because I've committed to all these massive business expenses to run my business. I've hired accountants and I've hired people to do this kind of marketing and that sort of thing. But yeah, I'll talk to people who are making like 50, $60,000 a month who will lose their shit when they see a day where something goes sideways. Um, that depends on sort of how close they're riding their because there's gross sales, there's profitability, and then there's cash flow, which all can be very different things. So it kind of depends on how close they're riding the cash flow edge. But and I say the same things to them. Like we need to like you're driving this massive ship, and maybe in some cases the massive ship is kind of pointed in the wrong direction, but you can't turn it around tomorrow. It's going to take time to like adjust all of these smaller factors that were at play to turn the ship around. um, and I think that's probably true for all of us that you can't unless your momentum is zero. It's pretty hard to make overnight changes. um, but I remind them that like every business has ups and downs. Every business has periods where things just don't work, where factors outside of our control will derail us, and we have to we have to be prepared for it. We should have like ideally we should have rainy day funds or emergency funds for when something goes sideways outside of our control, because things will go sideways outside of our control. And when we're looking at our spending, we need to basically say like, am I spending in such a fashion that I cannot build up a fund for when things go outside my control, or you know, um, am I fine? And I'm actually just kind of like I'm worried about this boogeyman that is caused by not actually having this real connection with the client, with our readers, and worrying that that number on page could go away. And we have to sort of divorce ourselves from that. We have to take a step back and say like, you know, things don't just die overnight usually. Um, Also, I need to have a plan for when things decline. What's my backup? What are the steps I'm going to do? Do I keep a release in reserve or something like that in case I need to bolster something? Do I have? Could I be running a sale? Am I like hitting up BookBub frequently enough? Um, is there an omnibus I could release to help bolster my numbers and give me things to share? Like we should always have quivers in our arrows in our quiver. Let's try that. Let's put arrows in our quiver instead, and like be ready for when things go sideways, because it's not like an if, it's a when. Amazon will have issues. Amazon will have rank freezes. They will happen during your next release, or if not your next release, another release. It's it's gonna happen. And we need to, rather than sort of lamenting about it and being fearful and worried, we need to say, like, what do I do when the bad thing happens? And have that plan. Because the only way you can feel better about uncertainty is when you've already thought about it in advance and you have a plan. It doesn't make you feel perfect about uncertainty. And when uncertainty strikes, you're still going to feel nervous, but at least you have strategies that you can take versus just sort of saying I have nothing. I'm starting from ground zero. The other thing that I think people do too much is, oh yeah, that's the worst. Vicky said she had a rank freeze for ages the day whenever books released. It's awful because that really affects the organic promotion that Amazon would do, because they're gonna, a lot of the sort of how much they surface your book, send out emails, depends on like how well your book is selling and how well it's ranking. If that data is out of date, then there's events that you'll totally miss. Um, and I think to a certain extent, we what this is teaching us more and more all the time is we can't rely on Amazon's organic promotion, because it just might not happen. So we have to have our own plan in place for our own organic promotion, swaps and discount deals, or you know some sort of giveaway that we're doing to generate buzz or something like that. So that we always need to have our own plan for these sorts of things. But we also just sort of need to remember, um, it's the universe is not out to get us, and Amazon is not out to get us. It's just the natural ups and downs that happen when you're involved in like a large complex business on the internet. Um, Overall, though, I do think that as authors, we need to do everything we can to take more control ourselves of our releases. Um, be that running them on your own Shopify store, be that doing Kickstarters to try to generate that real live connection with your readers, doing things to build and maintain your newsletter list. Because I tell you, a 10,000 person newsletter list can make for some really powerful releases. Even me, I went 5 years without releasing a book, and the only marketing I did for my new book was my newsletter, because it was like second book in a series that is 4 series deep. Like, it's not designed to be something that I could really market well to new readers. This particular series, like this far out, is like all fan service at this point. Um, but I still actually hit the same kind of numbers that I would have hit in like 2019, 2020 with this release, just by hitting my newsletter 5 years later, because I worked hard to build a super strong organic newsletter with many calls to action in my books to get different things to sign up for it, periodically running targeted ads, selling, pushing very strong reader magnets that I've tested over time, and building up this list. Um, and it was actually amazing, right? Because I didn't have to rely on Amazon to move this book. I had done the work, and the systems I set up, largely unmanaged for 5 years, continued to do the work, keeping the list going, building it further, culling out people that don't have those email addresses anymore, or bounce or unsubscribe, all that sort of thing. Yeah, it's a good. Vicky says I need to get better at doing other stuff. I'm too reliant on Facebook and Amazon, and yeah, that's the thing that we do a lot. We do rely too much on these big companies who really, they're going to make decisions about their bottom line and not really be too concerned about us. And that's totally evident in the fact that when it comes to all the different things Amazon can be spending their money on right now, like allocating their servers for, getting our data up to date is not one of them. We see it time and time again. So it is more about the stronger you can make your connection with your readers, and it takes time. It takes months, it takes years, but it takes you laying the groundwork, getting that Facebook group going if that's what you like to do, to establishing a Discord community, doing Patreon, right? Putting excerpts, or even like live, like every week, like putting your latest chapter in your newsletter. A lot of authors do that. Whatever feels good to you, whatever is an enjoyable process for you to build that connection with your readers, that's the kind of thing that gives you longevity and helps to assuage those feelings of uncertainty that you get when one of our retailers, or one of our reporting systems, or one of our places where we run our ads has issues. And not if, when they have issues, because they will always have issues. So that's kind of my spiel for today. I won't belabor the point too much longer, but I want you to know, like, one, everybody feels like this. Everybody has these moments of like, oh goodness, what's happening? Is this the end? Everybody. I've worked with authors who are 7 figures a month. They still have these feelings. It does not go away. It might in fact get worse, because depending on how you structure your business, if you end up having a lot of expenses, you can feel it more strongly, versus if you're running as lean as you can and sort of building the nest egg as much as possible, you might not feel it as much. But yeah, it's something that everybody feels. I don't. The downside is like, hey, it doesn't. I'm sorry, it doesn't get better. The upside is everybody feels this way. It's not just you. Everybody has these feelings of uncertainty and worry. Actually, one more point I do want to make. I started making this, and I ADHD my way off of it. Don't take too much advice. I've I've been talking with a lot of authors lately, and they are 100% in advice overload. And one of the main things I've been doing in some of my counsel, I call them counseling sessions for some people, because it's really what it feels like. It's not consulting anymore. I'm counseling them. Is I'm like, hey, you actually know what you're doing. You've done this before. You're probably more experienced than 3/4 of the people you're taking advice from. In some cases, no, but in some cases, yes. Um, and you know better, or even just that, just like, even if you're not super experienced and you do need to get advice, be super choosy about who you get your advice from, and don't listen to anybody else, because flailing and trying something, worrying that it's the wrong thing, turning it off and trying something else, is worse than taking a trusted professional's advice and just rolling with it for a while. you're always going to do worse by flailing than you would be by at least just staying the course any course. Flailing is also expensive and it's taxing mentally as well. So really be careful who you take advice from and limit the number of people you take advice from. And also remember, nobody has a silver bullet. I've been in this business for long enough to know I don't have a silver bullet. Nobody has a silver bullet. Nobody knows the answer to your problem. They know what might have worked for them. They know what might have worked for some other people, but they don't know what's going to work in your situation. So don't silver bullet hunt. Don't think that if you just keep trying enough stuff, you're going to find that perfect answer. The real answer is probably a whole bunch of little things done carefully, thoughtfully, and consistently. That's the real answer. It's there's a coach slash business entrepreneur I listen to, and that's you're not looking for a silver bullet. What you're looking for is like 1,000 good copper pennies, right? He has a better saying than that. I can't remember what it is now. I think was it darts? I forget. But basically, you're looking for a whole bunch of solid small things that you build up. And that's what's going to give you this nice foundation for your business. The silver bullet does not exist. And even if it did exist, it would stop working at some point. And then if you haven't built up the foundation of all these little things you're doing, reader outreach, building the list, having a good reader magnet, making connections with readers, diversifying where you sell books and where you advertise, all of these different things. If you haven't done all those other things, then when that silver bullet stops working, you have no foundation. So that's the only answer, really. The only answer is to do well all the small things, and they will build up and accumulate to into something good. I'm glad, Vicky, and it doesn't have to be me. I'm not saying people need to listen to me. I do not have all the answers, and there are some people who I'm like, man, I tried everything I can think of for this person, and I can't make their books sell the way they need them to sell. I think they're good books. I can't figure it out. They go to somebody else. Somebody else has the answer. Someone else has that thing that they need to do to get their business to the next level over the ledge they're trying to get it to get their ads to convert just a little bit better, to move well into profitability, whatever it might be. That does happen, but they were careful and methodical in trying things and moving and testing and whatnot. They weren't just flailing and trying all the things at once when that sort of thing happens. So all that to say, get a pool of people you listen to, but a small pool of people you listen to, and be methodical. And also do remember that, like, for not everybody does this, but most of the people who sort of operate in this business and talk about what they think you should be doing, what they think is going on, we give pretty generic advice. And that's one thing I'm actually super careful about doing. And in fact, I get a little bit riled up when I see people doing talks or presentations and whatnot where they're not giving super generic advice. Because, and you think almost it's a bad thing, like, Mallory, why are you giving such generic advice? And that's because the specific advice I might give to one person based on their circumstances and the things they've tried in the past will be different than the advice I'd give to somebody else. In fact, the advice I might give to one particular person based on their exact circumstances could be harmful to someone else. A great example is your car is stalled out on the side of the road, and maybe there's a bit of a hill. And if you could just push your car 10 feet, it'll start rolling down the hill and you're going to do great. Great. Well, you could just like open the door, throw the car in neutral, and push the car 10 feet and then get it rolling down the hill. Maybe there's a gas station at the bottom you get to get to or something like that. When you're going down that hill at 30 miles an hour and you want your car to go faster, getting out, putting a foot on the ground and trying to push the car is going to go very badly. And that's absolutely how things can work with book sales and marketing. Different advice works for different people at different stages. So, I do my best to give generic advice that I think will be useful to everybody and not harm anyone, not be advice that is going to hurt someone in a specific situation. I say that to basically say that that's something you need to sort of be thinking about, is that a lot of times the advice people are giving either is generic, and there would be nuances to your situation that could require some tweaks, which basically means you can't just take what someone says and just implement it. And if it doesn't work, be like, it didn't work. It doesn't. This is a bad idea. also, you also can't just, you have to be careful that the advice that they're giving is for someone in your current situation. Hopefully that kind of like clicks and makes sense. I know that's a bit of a tricky one, and it's not like, unfortunately, again, there's like, basically what I'm saying is that don't be suspicious of all advice, but be carefully judging of all advice, because some of it may be wrong, and some of it just might not be intended for you, or might just not work in your situation. And that's no fault of yours. It doesn't mean you did anything wrong. That doesn't mean you need to change what you're doing. It just means that there's a different answer for you, or it just means that there is no one answer. And if you were silver bullet hunting, that was the problem in the first place. It wasn't that the advice was bad. It was that you shouldn't be silver bullet hunting. You should be doing all the little things. BBs, that's what it was. No silver bullets. I want 100 golden BBs, I think is what the quote is. And I guess the idea is that if each one of these little BBs is awesome and golden, together they will far outweigh, one silver bullet. That's what it was, 100 golden BBs, which I think is super important. So anyway, with that, I am going to conclude. I said I was going to conclude like 10 minutes ago, and then I ADHD my way through another 10 minutes. But I hope you guys, everyone's been like wrapped. There's been so many people watching, but aren't even saying anything, which I guess is maybe a good thing. I hope you guys have a good week. I hope you guys don't stress out too much about the reporting, about the data. Think about the things you're doing in your business that will drive it forward. Writing the next book, planning that promotion, planning a newsletter swap with a bunch of authors that do well. I've talked to one author today, and she does direct sales, and they have this rotating newsletter swap that they all do with all the authors doing direct sales. And for her, that can actually be a pretty big boon, and that's the sort of thing that she wouldn't, that just focusing on, Facebook ads and the numbers, wouldn't have got her. She's broadening and building out her base of things she's doing that are keeping her stable. Be thinking about things like that. And I know, like, there's nothing super sexy, right? There's not like this new whiz bang thing. It's like, hey, guess what? All the advice that we've all been giving for like the last 15 years. Yeah, do that stuff. I'm sorry. It's like, talk to your readers, build a community, create a newsletter. That's the stuff that longevity is built out of. Have fun doing it. Don't do things you hate doing. Find a thing that you love doing and do that. Um, don't slog through some social media network doing posts every day that you can't stand, because your energy is better spent somewhere else. Okay, now I'm wrapping. Third time's the charm. Hope you guys have a fabulous week. Hope you guys maybe chill out, take some time, go for a walk, enjoy the fall foliage, enjoy the cooler weather. Or if you're south of the equator, enjoy how things are warming up. Hopefully probably not too warm yet, so that'll probably be nice. And I will see you guys next week. I feel like next week I should dress up, because I have not worn costumes in quite some time. It'll be the 30th of October, so maybe next week there'll be a costume. That'll be fun. All right. Bye, everyone. Have a fabulous weekend.